An orphan rescued a stray puppy, unaware it would lead her to her birth parents. The words echoed in Maya's mind like a half-remembered dream as she huddled beneath the bus shelter, rain hammering the metal roof above. 23 years of life, and still the word orphan clung to her like a shadow that wouldn't fade, even in the darkest night. She pulled her threadbare jacket tighter, the November chill seeping through worn seams that had been mended too many times. 3 job rejections in one day. The apartment she could barely afford now seemed like a luxury she would soon lose. Maya wiped away a tear with her sleeve, careful not to let anyone see, though the rain-soaked evening had chased most people indoors. That's when she heard it, a whimper so faint it might have been the wind. But it came again, more desperate this time. Maya peered behind the trash can at the edge of the shelter. 2 frightened eyes stared back, barely visible in the gathering darkness. A puppy, ribs protruding like piano keys beneath matted fur, trembled violently against the cold metal. Something inside Maya shifted, recognition perhaps, one abandoned soul recognizing another. "Hey there," she whispered, her voice gentle in ways she rarely allowed herself to be. "You're all alone too, huh?" The puppy cowered, pressing itself against the wall. Maya dug into her bag, finding the half-eaten sandwich she'd saved for tomorrow's breakfast. She tore off a piece and placed it on the ground between them. "It's okay," she said. "I know what it's like when nobody wants you." As the puppy inched forward, Maya noticed the gash on its front paw, angry and red against dirty white fur. The bus she needed to catch pulled up, headlights cutting through the rain. Without hesitation, Maya scooped the trembling bundle into her arms, sandwich forgotten. "I've got you," she murmured as the bus doors closed behind them. "We unwanted things have to stick together." She named him Scout. The apartment superintendent had strict rules about pets, rules that could get Maya evicted even faster than her dwindling bank account. But as she bathed the puppy in her tiny sink, watching the water turn from gray to clear, revealing patches of white and caramel fur beneath the grime, Maya made a silent promise. They would protect each other. "You're staying with me," she told Scout as she wrapped him in a towel, his tiny heart racing against her palm. "We'll figure it out." That night, with Scout curled against her stomach, Maya slept without nightmares for the first time in months. No foster homes, no caseworkers with pitying smiles, no faceless parents walking away. Just warmth and the soft rhythm of another beating heart. The next morning brought sunshine that seemed to mock yesterday's despair. Maya created a makeshift bed from an old sweater, hiding it beneath her bed where the superintendent wouldn't find it during inspections. She cleaned Scout's wound with supplies from the corner drugstore, wincing at the cost that would mean skipping lunch for the next few days. "Worth it though, right?" she asked, scratching behind Scout's ears as he licked her hand. His tail wagged tentatively, as if he wasn't sure if happiness was allowed. Maya left for another job interview, heart heavy with the thought of leaving Scout alone. "I'll be back," she promised, not knowing if the puppy understood abandonment the way she did. The interview went surprisingly well. A small cafe needed weekend help, barely enough to keep her afloat, but something. The owner, an older woman named Ellen with kind eyes and flour-dusted hands, seemed to look past Maya's second-hand clothes and nervous answers. "You've got good hands," Ellen said, noticing how carefully Maya handled the delicate teacups during her impromptu tryout. "Gentle but strong. That's what we need here." Walking home, Maya felt something unfamiliar stirring in her chest. Hope, perhaps. Fragile as spider silk, but undeniably there. The moment she opened her apartment door, Scout charged across the floor, stumbling on his injured paw but determined to reach her. He yelped with what could only be described as joy, circling her legs and looking up with adoration that made Maya's throat tighten. "Someone's happy to see me," she whispered, kneeling to scoop him up. Scout licked her face, his entire body wiggling with excitement. "I can't remember the last time anyone was happy when I came home." Over the next weeks, Maya and Scout fell into a routine. She worked mornings at the cafe where Ellen taught her to bake bread and craft lattes with cinnamon hearts on top. Scout stayed hidden in the apartment, getting stronger each day. Maya smuggled him outside in her backpack before dawn and after dark, letting him explore small patches of grass in the neglected park nearby. "You're getting heavy," she told him one evening as they sat watching the sunset from a bench. Scout was growing quickly, his coat now glossy with health, the white and caramel patches forming a pattern like a puzzle waiting to be solved. "Pretty soon I won't be able to hide you anymore." The worry was constant. If she lost her apartment, where would they go? The shelters didn't take pets, and Maya would sooner sleep on the streets than abandon Scout. He had become her family, the only one who had ever stayed. One crisp December morning, Maya took Scout to the park earlier than usual. Fresh snow had fallen overnight, and she couldn't resist letting him experience it. His bewilderment at the cold white stuff made her laugh, a sound so foreign to her own ears that it startled her. Scout bounded through the snow, leaving chaotic paw prints behind him. He had outgrown the timid, trembling puppy she'd found. Now he ran with confidence, his tail a flag of joy behind him. "Quite the energetic fellow you've got there." Maya startled, turning to find an older man watching Scout with amusement. He wore a worn canvas jacket and a knitted cap pulled low over gray hair. Instinctively, she moved to collect Scout, fear of being reported to the apartment management flashing through her mind. "Don't worry," the man said, seeming to read her thoughts. "I'm not the dog police. Just enjoying the sight of a happy pup in the snow. Reminds me of my Rosie. Had her for 16 years. Something in his voice, a gentle sadness, made Maya pause. "What happened to her?" "Old age took her last spring." He smiled, the lines around his eyes deepening. "Best friend I ever had. I'm sorry," Maya said, meaning it. "I'm Walter," he offered, extending a gloved hand. "Maya." She hesitated before shaking it. "And that's Scout." As if hearing his name, Scout bounded back, snow covering his muzzle. He circled Walter curiously, then sat at Maya's feet, looking between them. "He's got unusual markings," Walter commented. "That pattern on his chest. Looks almost like a bird in flight." Maya looked more closely at Scout's chest, where the white fur formed a shape against the caramel background. "I never noticed that before. I used to breed dogs back when my joints didn't complain so much. Your boy there has the look of a very specific mix. Border Collie and something else. Mind if I take a closer look?" Walter knelt with surprising agility and gently examined Scout, who submitted to the inspection with uncharacteristic patience. "Yep, Border Collie for sure, probably mixed with Golden Retriever. Smart as they come, those combinations. Loyal to a fault. He found me, actually," Maya said, surprising herself with the admission. "In the rain by a bus stop." Walter nodded as if this made perfect sense. Dogs have a way of finding exactly who they need to find. He straightened with a slight wince. "I live just over there." He pointed to a small house at the edge of the park. "If you ever need advice about this fellow, or just a place where he can run without having to look over your shoulder, my gate's always open." Maya nodded, not committing but touched by the offer. As Walter walked away, Scout watched him go with unusual intensity. "What do you think, Scout? Is he okay?" She scratched behind his ears. "You're usually a better judge of character than I am." That evening at the cafe, Ellen kept Maya later than usual. "Christmas rush," she explained, though the cafe was hardly bustling. "People need extra treats this time of year." When Maya finally punched out, Ellen handed her a small box tied with string. "Day-old pastries?" she said with a wink. "Would be a shame to waste them." The kindness was so unexpected that Maya felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you," she managed, tucking the box into her bag. Outside, the snow had started again, large flakes swirling under the streetlights. Maya hurried, anxious to get back to Scout. She'd never left him alone this long before. Rounding the corner to her building, Maya froze. The superintendent's car was parked outside, and next to it, an animal control van. Her heart plummeted. Someone had reported Scout. Maya backed away slowly, then turned and ran back the way she had come, mind racing. Where could she go? What would happen to Scout if they took him? The municipal shelter was overcrowded. She'd read about their high euthanasia rates. Without conscious decision, Maya found herself heading toward the park, toward Walter's small house with its light glowing warm through the gathering darkness. It was a desperate move, trusting a stranger, but Scout had seemed to like him. Sometimes that was all you could go on. Walter answered on the second knock, surprise evident on his weathered face. "They found him," Maya blurted out, unable to keep the tremor from her voice. "Animal control is at my building. I can't let them take him." Understanding dawned in Walter's eyes. Without hesitation, he stepped back. Come in, come in. It's freezing out there." The house was small but tidy, walls lined with bookshelves and old photographs. A fire crackled in a small wood stove, filling the space with warmth that seemed to wrap around Maya like an embrace. "Tell me what happened," Walter said, guiding her to an armchair close to the fire. The story spilled out of Maya, finding Scout, hiding him in her apartment, the constant fear of discovery. "I know it was against the rules, but I couldn't leave him there in the rain. He was so small and hurt, and..." She trailed off, embarrassed by the emotion clogging her throat. "You did the right thing," Walter said simply. He moved to the kitchen, returning with a steaming mug of tea. "Here, this helps most troubles, at least a little." The tea was sweet and fragrant with spices Maya couldn't name. She cradled the mug, letting the warmth seep into her cold fingers. "I don't know what to do now," she admitted. "I can't go back there tonight, but I need to get Scout." Walter considered this, absently stroking his beard. "I might have an idea. Let me make a call." As he moved to the old rotary phone on the wall, Maya noticed a photograph on the side table next to her. A younger Walter stood beside a pretty woman with curly dark hair, both of them laughing as a border collie leapt between them, caught mid-air by the camera. "That's my Rosie," Walter said, returning from his call. "And my wife, Jane. Both gone now." "I'm sorry," Maya said again, feeling the inadequacy of the words. Walter smiled, a gentle sadness in his eyes. "Life gives and takes away. The trick is to remember that it's always doing both at once." He checked his watch. "My friend Marcus is the night manager at your building. He's going to make sure your apartment gets inspected right away, find nothing amiss, and send the animal control folks on their way." Apparently it was Mrs. Griggs in 3B who reported suspicious barking. "Marcus will tell her it must have been the television." Hope fluttered in Maya's chest. "Really? You can do that?" "Not me. Marcus. We go way back. He owes me a favor or two." Walter settled into the chair opposite her. "You can stay here tonight if you'd like. In the morning, we'll figure out a more permanent solution." For reasons she couldn't explain, Maya trusted him. Perhaps it was the gentle way he spoke of his departed wife and dog, or the lack of judgment when she confessed to breaking the rules. Or maybe it was simply that Scout had sensed something in him that Maya was only now beginning to see. They talked late into the evening, Walter telling stories of the dogs he'd bred and trained, of Jane who had been a schoolteacher with a soft spot for strays of all species. "She would have liked you," he said at one point, the statement so matter-of-fact that Maya didn't know how to respond. Walter showed her to a small guest room that looked hardly used, the quilt fresh and smelling faintly of lavender. "Get some rest. Everything looks brighter in the morning." Lying in the unfamiliar bed, Maya thought she should feel afraid, or at least uncomfortable. Instead, a strange peace had settled over her, as if she'd stepped into a story where things might actually turn out all right. The next morning, Walter drove her back to her apartment building. No animal control van in sight. The superintendent nodded to Walter as they passed, no suspicion in his eyes. "Morning, Walt. Cold one today." "Morning, Marcus. Thanks for checking on that noise complaint last night." "No problem. Must have been the TV, like you said." Inside her apartment, Scout greeted Maya with frantic joy, spinning in circles and whining as if she'd been gone for years instead of hours. She knelt, burying her face in his fur, breathing in his warm, doggy scent. "I was so worried," she whispered. "I'm sorry I left you alone so long." Walter cleared his throat softly. "I've been thinking about your situation. Got a proposition for you if you're interested." Maya looked up, still holding Scout close. "That spare room at my place isn't doing anybody any good sitting empty. And I've got that fenced yard that's just begging for a dog to run in it. Maybe you and Scout would consider renting it? Reasonable rate, of course. And no pet restrictions." The offer was so unexpected that Maya couldn't immediately respond. "Why would you do that? You hardly know me." Walter's gaze was steady, kind but not pitying. "I know enough. I know you sacrificed to care for a creature that needed help. I know loyalty when I see it." He paused. "And I know what it's like to be alone when you don't want to be." Maya looked around her tiny apartment, the place she'd struggled to keep, where every month was a battle against eviction. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll think about it. No rush." Walter handed her a slip of paper with his phone number. "Whatever you decide, that offer of a place for Scout to run stands. Anytime." After he left, Maya sat on her bed, Scout curled beside her, and allowed herself to imagine a different life. A room in a real house. A yard for Scout. A landlord who saw her as a person, not just a rent check or a potential problem. It was too good to be true, which meant there had to be a catch. At the cafe that afternoon, Maya found herself confiding in Ellen as they kneaded dough side by side. "Walter Donovan?" Ellen's flour-dusted hands paused. "Old house by the park? Used to breed border collies?" Maya nodded, anxiety building. "Do you know him?" Ellen's laugh was rich and warm. "Half the town knows Walt. One of the good ones through and through. After Jane died, he started that scholarship fund for local kids. Quiet about it, though. Doesn't like recognition. Scholarship fund? For college? especially for foster kids aging out of the system. Jane couldn't have children, you see. It was their way of making a difference anyway. Maya's hands stilled in the dough. Foster kids, like she had been. I'd trust Walt with my life, Ellen continued, oblivious to Maya's racing thoughts. If he's offered you a place, I'd say that's the universe doing you a favor. That evening, Maya called the number Walter had given her. His voice was warm with pleasure when she accepted his offer, and they arranged for her to move in that weekend. The night before the move, Maya sat cross-legged on her bed, Scout beside her as she sorted through her meager possessions. What do you keep when you've never had much to begin with? A small wooden box held the sum total of her past, a hospital bracelet from her birth, a faded photograph of herself as a baby being held by a nurse, a report card from 3rd grade where a teacher had written, "Maya shows exceptional resilience." The official report from the police stating that her abandonment case had been closed due to lack of leads. No parents had ever come forward to claim the baby left at the fire station wrapped in a hand-knitted blue blanket. Maya ran her fingers over the blanket, now worn thin with age. It was the only thing she had from her birth parents, that and a small silver pendant shaped like a bird in flight, which had been pinned to the blanket. She rarely wore it, keeping it safe in the box instead, a talisman of a connection she'd never known. Scout nudged her hand with his nose, bringing her back to the present. She scratched behind his ears, smiling as he leaned into her touch. "You're my family now," she told him. "That's enough." But as she tucked the box into her backpack, Maya couldn't help wondering, as she had countless times before, who had knitted this blanket with such care, only to leave her behind. Moving day dawned bright and cold. Ellen surprised Maya by closing the cafe for 2 hours to help with the move, bringing her station wagon and several boxes of kitchen essentials that every young person needs. Walter greeted them with coffee and fresh cinnamon rolls, and Scout explored the fenced yard with unbridled joy, racing in wild circles through the snow. "He's never had this much space before," Maya explained, watching him through the kitchen window. "Dogs need room to be dogs," Walter said, "just like people need room to be people." He placed a key on the counter between them. "Your room is yours. Fix it up however you want. Stay as long as you need." It took less than an hour to move Maya's belongings into the spare room. When Ellen had gone back to the cafe and Walter had retreated to his workshop in the garage, Maya sat on the edge of her new bed, looking around at the cozy space. Scout lay at her feet, exhausted from his yard exploration. "What do you think?" she asked him. "Is this home now?" Scout thumped his tail against the floor, eyes already closing in contentment. The weeks leading up to Christmas passed in a blur of new routines. Maya continued working at the cafe, now able to pick up more hours since Scout could stay at the house with Walter. She discovered that her new landlord was both an early riser and an excellent cook, often having breakfast waiting when she emerged from her room. "You don't have to feed me," she protested one morning as he set a plate of perfectly cooked eggs before her. "I know that," he replied easily. "But cooking for one is a sorry business. Humor an old man who likes company at breakfast." They fell into comfortable patterns. Walter in his workshop crafting wooden toys, a hobby that got out of hand, he explained, and Maya either at the cafe or helping around the house, determined to earn her keep beyond the modest rent she paid. In the evenings, they often sat by the fire, Walter reading while Maya sketched in a notebook Ellen had given her after discovering her drawing a remarkably accurate portrait of Scout on a napkin. "You've got a gift there," Walter commented one night, peering over at the drawing taking shape under her pencil. Jane was artistic too. She used to say that art was how the soul speaks when words aren't enough. Maya looked down at her sketch, Walter's profile as he read by the fire, Scout curled at his feet. She hadn't planned to draw them. Her hands had simply known what her heart wanted to capture. "I never really had time for it before," she admitted. "Always working, always just trying to stay afloat." Walter nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Sometimes we need to find still water before we can see our own reflection clearly." As Christmas approached, the cafe grew busier. Ellen hired another worker, a college student named Lily, but still kept Maya on for more hours than before. "You've got a knack for this," Ellen told her as Maya expertly swirled milk into a complex Rosetta pattern atop a latte. "Not just the technical stuff. You make people feel welcome." The compliment warmed Maya more than she expected. She'd never thought of herself as particularly good with people, having spent so much of her life trying to be invisible. One afternoon, just days before Christmas, the cafe door chimed and Walter entered, stomping snow from his boots. It was the first time he'd visited Maya at work, and she felt an unexpected surge of pleasure at seeing him there. "Thought I'd see what all the fuss is about," he explained, settling at the counter. "Ellen's been bragging about your coffee art." Maya made him a cappuccino, carefully crafting a dog silhouette in the foam that bore a distinct resemblance to Scout. Walter's delight was palpable. "Too pretty to drink," he declared, though he sipped it anyway, leaving a foam mustache that made Maya laugh. As she wiped down the counter, Walter cleared his throat. "I was wondering if you might be free this evening to help me with something. Bit of a Christmas tradition I could use an extra pair of hands for." "Of course," Maya replied without hesitation. "What kind of tradition?" But Walter was mysteriously vague, saying only that she should dress warmly and that they'd leave after dinner. That evening, after a meal of beef stew that Walter had left simmering all day, they loaded several large boxes into his truck. Scout, wearing a red bandana Walter had tied around his neck, rode between them on the bench seat, his head swiveling from window to window as they drove through town. They pulled up to a plain brick building that Maya recognized as the local children's home, a place for kids waiting for foster placement or whose parents were temporarily unable to care for them. "I bring toys," Walter explained, seeing her questioning look. "The ones I make all year? Nothing fancy compared to what kids want these days, but tradition is tradition." Inside, they were greeted by a woman with silver-streaked hair who embraced Walter like an old friend. "Right on time, Walt," she said. "The kids are so excited. We've told them Santa's special helper is coming." Maya helped unload the boxes, stunned by the beautiful wooden toys inside, intricate trains with cars that actually coupled together, dollhouses with tiny furniture, animals carved with such detail they seemed ready to leap to life. Each one was clearly made with extraordinary care and skill. The children, about 20 in all, ranged from toddlers to early teens. They gathered in the common room, eyes widening as Walter and Maya set out the toys. Walter didn't play Santa. There was no costume, no ho-ho-ho, but he did have a natural way with the children, kneeling to their level, listening intently to their chatter, helping the little ones choose toys that matched their interests. Maya found herself drawn to a girl of about 8, sitting slightly apart from the others, watching silently. She had dark hair pulled into uneven pigtails and wary eyes that reminded Maya painfully of herself at that age. "Would you like to see the toys?" Maya asked, sitting beside her but not too close. The girl shrugged one shoulder, trying for indifference but unable to hide the longing in her gaze. "I think there's a really beautiful horse in there," Maya continued conversationally, "with a mane you can actually braid. I noticed you have nice braids yourself." "They're not nice," the girl muttered. "Ms. Diane did them, but she's not very good at it. I could fix them for you if you want," Maya offered. "I used to do hair for some of the younger girls when I was—" She hesitated. "When I lived in a place like this." The girl's eyes widened slightly. "You lived in a home?" Maya nodded. "From when I was a baby until I was 18. This admission seemed to shift something between them. The girl inched closer. "I'm Zoe. My mom's sick, but she's going to come back for me when she gets better." "I'm Maya. It's nice to meet you, Zoe." By the time Walter was ready to leave, Maya had fixed Zoe's pigtails, helped her select the wooden horse. "His name is Thunderbolt." Zoe had decided immediately and promised to visit again. "You were wonderful with her," Walter said as they drove home through the gently falling snow. "Natural." Maya looked out the window, throat tight with emotion. "I know what it's like, that's all. To be the quiet one. The one who's afraid to want things in case you don't get to keep them." Walter was silent for a moment, hands steady on the wheel. "Jane and I wanted children," he said finally. "Never happened for us, so we found other ways to matter to kids who needed it. The toys, the scholarship fund. Not the same as having our own, but still important." "It is important," Maya said fiercely. "You have no idea how much those small kindnesses mean when you're—" She cut herself off, suddenly embarrassed. "When you're what?" Walter prompted gently. "When you're afraid you're invisible," she finished quietly. "When you worry that if you disappeared completely, no one would even notice." Walter pulled the truck over to the side of the road and turned to face her. Scout, sensing the shift in mood, placed his paw on Maya's leg. "I see you, Maya," Walter said, his voice gruff with emotion. "And I suspect I'm not the only one. Ellen sees you. That little girl tonight saw you. This fellow here certainly sees you." He nodded toward Scout, who whined softly as if in agreement. Tears spilled down Maya's cheeks, impossible to stop. "I don't know why I'm crying," she said, wiping them away with her sleeve. "I'm happy. I'm happier than I've been in, maybe ever." Sometimes joy hurts a little, Walter said simply, especially when it's new. Christmas Eve arrived with a fresh blanket of snow and the scent of pine filling the house from the small tree Walter had brought home. Maya had never had a real Christmas tree before and found herself pausing throughout the day just to breathe in its fragrance. "We should decorate it," Walter announced after dinner. "I've got a box of ornaments in the attic gathering dust." The ornaments turned out to be a collection spanning decades: handmade paper stars yellowed with age, delicate glass balls, tiny framed photographs of Walter and Jane across the years. Each one had a story that Walter shared as they carefully hung them on the branches. "Jane made this one our first Christmas together," he explained, holding up a cross-stitched heart with their initials and the year 1972. "Neither of us had 2 nickels to rub together, so we made gifts that year." Maya hesitated before reaching into her pocket. "I made something too. For the tree." She withdrew a small ornament she'd crafted from polymer clay, a miniature scout, complete with the distinctive marking on his chest. Walter's eyes misted as he took it. "It's perfect. He should definitely be on the tree." He hung it on a prominent branch, then stepped back to admire it. "Every ornament tells a part of the story. Now Scout is part of it too." "And me?" Maya asked before she could stop herself. Walter smiled, resting a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You've been part of this story longer than you know, my dear." Before Maya could ask what he meant, Scout began barking at the window. A car had pulled into the driveway, Ellen carrying a large basket covered with a red cloth. "Christmas Eve tradition," she announced, bustling in with a flurry of cold air. "Hot cocoa and my grandmother's stolen. Can't break tradition?" The evening passed in a warmth Maya had never experienced before, the 3 of them and Scout by the fire, exchanging stories and sharing Ellen's delicious bread. When Ellen left, she hugged Maya tightly. "Merry Christmas, dear girl," she whispered. "I'm so glad you found your way here." Later, as Maya prepared for bed, Walter knocked softly on her door. "One more tradition if you're not too tired," he said. "Midnight service at the little church down the road. Nothing fancy, just carols and candlelight." Jane never missed it. Maya hesitated only briefly before nodding. "I'd like that." The church was a small wooden structure with stained glass windows that glowed from within like jewels against the night. Inside, it was warm and fragrant with pine boughs and beeswax candles. They slipped into a pew near the back as the congregation sang Silent Night, their voices blending in the peaceful darkness. As the service concluded and people filed out into the snowy night, exchanging Christmas wishes, an elderly woman stopped beside their pew, her face lighting up at the sight of Walter. "Walt! I didn't expect to see you here this year." Her gaze shifted to Maya with undisguised curiosity. "And who is this lovely young lady?" "Ruth, this is Maya," Walter said. "She's renting Jane's studio and helping me keep Scout in line." Ruth was Jane's best friend for 40 years. Ruth's eyes widened slightly. "Maya? What a beautiful coincidence." That was Jane's favorite name. If they'd ever had a daughter, that's what they would have named her. Maya felt something shift in the air, a strange prickling at the back of her neck. "Really?" Ruth nodded. Jane always said it meant water in some language or other. She loved that, the idea of something constantly flowing, adapting, finding its way forward no matter what obstacles it faced. On the drive home, Maya was quiet, turning Ruth's words over in her mind. It was just a coincidence, of course. Maya wasn't an uncommon name. Yet something about the evening had left her feeling unsettled, as if she was standing on the edge of a revelation she couldn't quite grasp. Walter seemed lost in his own thoughts as well, his profile illuminated by the dashboard lights as he navigated the snow-covered roads with careful precision. Back at the house, Maya paused at her bedroom door. "Thank you for tonight," she said. "For everything, really." Walter smiled, though something like sadness flickered in his eyes. "Thank you for bringing life back into this old house." "Sleep well, Maya." Christmas morning dawned clear and bright, sunlight glinting off the snow like scattered diamonds. Maya woke to the sound of Scout whining excitedly at her door, clearly aware that this day was special. Coming," she laughed, pulling on her robe. She had simple gifts for both Walter and Scout, a handmade leather collar for Scout with his name burned into it, and for Walter, a framed drawing she'd done of him and Scout together in the workshop. In the living room, Walter was already up, stoking the fire. A few wrapped packages sat under the tree, and the smell of coffee and cinnamon rolls filled the air. "Merry Christmas," he greeted her, eyes crinkling with pleasure. "Hope you like cinnamon rolls. Jane's recipe only make them once a year." They exchanged gifts over breakfast, Scout prancing around in his new collar while Walter examined Maya's drawing with suspiciously bright eyes. "You've captured him perfectly," he said. "Both of us, really. I'll treasure this." He handed Maya a small package wrapped in silver paper. "This one's from me. Nothing fancy, but it made me think of you." Inside was a beautiful wooden box, clearly made by Walter's hands, with an inlaid design on the lid. A bird in flight, remarkably similar to Scout's chest marking, and the pendant Maya kept hidden away. "It's beautiful," she breathed, running her fingers over the smooth wood. "Open it," Walter encouraged. The box contained a delicate silver chain with a small key pendant. "Every young person should have a key of their own," Walter explained. "Symbolic, I suppose, but important nonetheless." Maya clasped it around her neck, touched beyond words by the thoughtfulness of the gift. The key rested just below her collarbone, its weight unfamiliar but comforting. "There's one more," Walter said, reaching for the last package under the tree. "This one? Well, this one has been waiting for you for a long time." Something in his tone made Maya's heart quicken. The package was wrapped in simple brown paper, no bow or decoration, and felt surprisingly heavy in her hands. "What is it?" she asked, suddenly hesitant to open it. Walter's eyes were steady on hers. "It's your history, Maya. At least part of it." With trembling fingers, Maya unwrapped the package to reveal a leather-bound photo album. She opened it to the first page and gasped. There was the blue blanket, her blanket, the one she'd been wrapped in when she was abandoned. Only in this photograph it was new, the color vibrant, being knitted by a young woman with curly dark hair and a smile that crinkled her eyes just like Walter's. "Jane," Maya whispered, recognition immediate though she'd only seen photos of Walter's wife as an older woman. Walter nodded, his voice thick with emotion. "She made that blanket for our daughter." Maya's mind reeled, unable to process what she was hearing. She turned the page. There was Jane again. Clearly pregnant, Walter's arm around her as they stood in front of this very house, much newer looking. The next page, a hospital room, Jane holding a tiny bundle wrapped in the blue blanket, exhaustion and joy mingled on her face. Walter beside her, looking down at the baby with undisguised awe. And then a death certificate. "Baby girl Donovan, age 6 weeks. Cause of death? Sudden infant death syndrome." "I don't understand," Maya said, her voice barely audible. Walter took a deep breath. "Jane and I had a daughter. In 1995. We named her Maya after Jane's grandmother. She was perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, a cry like a songbird." His voice broke. "And then one morning she just didn't wake up." Maya stared at him, tears streaming down her face. "But what does this have to do with me?" "Turn to the last page," Walter said gently. The final photograph in the album was one Maya recognized, the picture of herself as a newborn, being held by a nurse. The one that had been in her wooden box for as long as she could remember, but this version was clearer, showing details Maya had never been able to make out in her worn copy. Details like the name tag on the nurse's uniform, J. Donovan R.N. Jane was a school nurse, Walter explained, his own tears falling freely now. "After we lost our Maya, she couldn't bear to be around children for a while. Took a job at the hospital instead in the nursery ward. That's where she was the night you were brought in. Abandoned, they said. Left at the fire station with nothing but a blanket and a silver pendant." Maya's hand moved unconsciously to her throat, to the place where her bird pendant usually rested beneath her clothes. "Jane was the one who processed you that night," Walter continued. "She was the one who filled out your paperwork, who held you while they waited for social services to arrive. And she was the one who couldn't bear to put baby dough on your forms. So she wrote Maya instead. She named me?" Maya whispered. Walter nodded. "She came home that night and cried in my arms for hours. Said it felt like a sign, this abandoned baby girl, born almost exactly when our Maya would have turned one. She wanted to adopt you, to bring you home. But we were still raw with grief, and the process seemed overwhelming. By the time we were ready, you'd already been placed in foster care, and the system, it wasn't as easy to navigate as we'd hoped." Maya couldn't speak, couldn't think. The room seemed to be spinning around her. "We tried to find you," Walter said, his voice pleading for understanding. "For years we tried, but privacy laws, changing caseworkers, our own limited resources, we lost track of you. Jane never forgave herself for that. Before she died, she made me promise to keep looking." "And Scout?" Maya finally managed. "What does Scout have to do with this?" Walter smiled through his tears. "Nothing and everything. The marking on his chest, It's identical to the pendant that was pinned to your blanket. Jane's family crest, a bird in flight. When I saw him with you that day in the park, I knew. I finally found you." Maya looked down at Scout, who had settled at her feet, his warm weight anchoring her to reality. The bird marking on his chest seemed to glow in the morning light. "All this time?" she said, voice breaking. "All these years of feeling unwanted, abandoned. And I was loved? Looked for?" Walter moved to sit beside her on the couch, tentative, giving her space to pull away if she needed to. "You were loved from the moment Jane held you. You were looked for every day of my life since then. And you were never, ever forgotten." Maya closed her eyes, feeling the weight of this revelation press against her chest like a physical thing. 23 years of believing no one had wanted her, that she had been discarded like something without value. And all along there had been Walter and Jane, searching, hoping. "I don't know what to do with this," she admitted, opening her eyes to meet Walter's anxious gaze. "It's too much. Too big." "You don't have to do anything with it right now," Walter said gently. "It doesn't change who you are. It just fills in some blanks, maybe. Answers questions you might have had." Scout whined softly, nudging Maya's hand with his nose. She scratched behind his ears automatically, drawing comfort from the familiar gesture. "If Jane had known," Walter continued after a moment, "that you were just across town all these years, that you grew up so close to us without us knowing, it would have broken her heart all over again." "But why didn't you tell me as soon as you realized who I was?" Maya asked. "Why wait until now?" Walter sighed, running a hand through his gray hair. "Fear mostly. Fear that you would think I was crazy or lying or trying to manipulate you somehow. Fear that you would run and I would lose you again before I had a chance to know you. I needed you to see that I wasn't trying to replace what you've built for yourself. That's why I offered you the room as a rental, not as anything else." Maya looked around the room, at the Christmas tree with its history of ornaments, at the fireplace where she and Walter had spent evenings talking like old friends, at Scout who had somehow found her at exactly the right moment. "Scout led me to you," she said softly, Jane's family crest on his chest. "Like he was sent to find me." Walter smiled. Jane would have said it was meant to be. She believed in things like that, signs, fate, the universe conspiring to heal what was broken. "And what do you believe?" Maya asked. "I believe that love doesn't end, even when people do. I believe Jane never stopped looking out for both of us. And I believe that Scout recognized something in you that needed saving as much as you recognized something in him." Maya took a deep breath, trying to steady herself against the tide of emotions threatening to overwhelm her. "I don't know if I can be your daughter," she said honestly. "I don't know if I know how." "I'm not asking you to be anything other than who you are," Walter replied. Maya, the stubborn, brave, kind young woman who rescues puppies in the rain and fixes little girls' pigtails and draws pictures that capture the soul of things. That's all I ever wanted to know, that the baby Jane held that night grew up whole and strong and capable of both giving and receiving love. Something crystallized in Maya's mind, a memory of Walter's words the day they'd returned from the children's home. "You've been part of this story longer than you know, my dear. You know what's strange?" she said, wiping away tears. "This is the first Christmas I can remember where I didn't feel lonely. Even before knowing any of this, I already felt like I belonged here somehow, like I'd come home without realizing I was looking for one." Walter's smile was radiant through his tears. "Maybe you had. Maybe we both did." Scout, sensing the shift in the emotional current, jumped up on the couch between them, tail wagging tentatively. Maya laughed despite herself, scratching under his chin. "You knew all along, didn't you?" she asked him. "Clever boy." In the stillness that followed, as sunlight streamed through the windows and Scout settled contentedly between them, Maya felt something inside her unfurl. A tension she'd carried so long she'd forgotten it wasn't part of her. The orphan who had rescued a stray puppy had, against all odds, been rescued in return. Not just by Scout, but by the past she'd never known she had, the love that had been searching for her all along. "I'd like to hear more," she said finally, her finger tracing the edge of a photograph of Jane. "About her, about the baby you lost, about everything." Walter nodded, gratitude plain on his weathered face. "I'd like that too. We have time now. All the time we need?" Outside, fresh snow began to fall, blanketing the world in clean white possibility. Scout pressed closer to Maya's side, his warmth a steadying presence as she turned back to the first page of the album, ready now to learn the beginning of a story that somehow had always been hers.